Welcome everyone. Today we are exploring one of the most influential science books ever written, The Selfish Gene by Richard Dawkins, published in 1976. This book changed the way millions of people think about life, evolution, and what it really means to be alive. Richard Dawkins was born in Kenya in 1941 and grew up in England. He studied zoology at Oxford University and later became one of the most famous science writers in the world. He wanted to explain complex biology in a way that ordinary people could understand and enjoy. Before writing this book, Dawkins noticed a problem. Most people thought evolution was about the survival of the species, that animals behaved the way they do to help their group or their family survive. But Dawkins believed this explanation was incomplete and sometimes completely wrong. He wanted to answer a deeper question: why do living things behave the way they do? Why do animals fight, cooperate, sacrifice themselves, or compete? His answer was both simple and shocking. The real unit of evolution, Dawkins argued, is not the individual animal. It is not even the species. It is the gene. Genes are the tiny pieces of DNA inside every living cell, and according to Dawkins, they are the true drivers of all life on Earth. Now let us look at the key ideas that make this book so powerful. The first key idea is this: genes are selfish survivors. Dawkins does not mean that genes have feelings or make choices. He uses the word selfish as a metaphor. What he means is that genes behave as if their only goal is to copy themselves and survive into the next generation. Any gene that is good at surviving will become more common over time. Any gene that is bad at surviving will disappear. Here is a simple example from the book. Imagine a gene that causes a bird to build a stronger nest. Birds with this gene protect their eggs better. More eggs survive. More baby birds are born carrying that same gene. Over thousands of generations, this gene spreads through the whole population. The gene did not decide to do this. But the result is the same as if it had. Dawkins explains that our bodies, and the bodies of every animal on Earth, are what he calls survival machines. We are like robots built by genes to carry them safely through time. This is a strange and uncomfortable idea, but Dawkins argues the evidence strongly supports it. The second key idea is about altruism, and why it is not what it seems. Altruism means doing something good for others, even at a cost to yourself. For a long time, scientists struggled to explain altruism using evolution. If survival is everything, why would an animal ever help another animal at its own expense? Dawkins gives a famous example: the worker bee. A worker bee will sting an enemy to protect the hive, even though stinging kills the bee. How can this be explained by selfish genes? The answer is called kin selection. Worker bees share a very large percentage of their genes with the queen bee and with their sisters. By dying to protect the hive, the worker bee is actually helping copies of its own genes to survive in its relatives. The gene for self-sacrifice spreads because it helps the gene itself, carried in the bodies of close relatives, to survive. Dawkins uses a memorable phrase from the biologist J.B.S. Haldane to illustrate this. Haldane once joked that he would give his life for 2 brothers or 8 cousins. This is not just dark humor. It is actually mathematically correct from a gene's point of view. You share 50% of your genes with a brother and 12.5% with a cousin. The numbers add up. This idea explains so much of animal behavior: why parents sacrifice for children, why siblings cooperate, and why animals are generally kinder to relatives than to strangers. The third key idea is the concept of the meme. This is perhaps the most surprising part of the book, and it has had an enormous impact on modern culture. Dawkins invented the word meme in this book, and today it is used by millions of people, though often in a different way than Dawkins intended. Dawkins asked a fascinating question: is the gene the only thing that evolves? Could the same process of copying, variation, and selection happen with ideas? He argued yes. A meme is a unit of cultural information, a song, an idea, a fashion, a phrase, a belief, that spreads from mind to mind. Just like genes, memes that are good at spreading become more common. Memes that are not good at spreading disappear. Think about a catchy song. You hear it once and it stays in your head. You hum it to a friend. They hum it to someone else. The song spreads not because it is true or useful, but because it is good at copying itself from brain to brain. Dawkins says this is exactly how genes work, and the parallel is not just a metaphor. It is a genuine second system of evolution happening alongside biological evolution. This idea was revolutionary. It suggested that human culture itself is shaped by a kind of evolution, that ideas compete with each other for space in our minds, just as genes compete for space in the gene pool. But here is what almost no one talks about when they discuss this book. Dawkins does not believe that selfish genes make us helpless prisoners. In fact, he ends the book with one of the most hopeful messages in all of science writing. He writes that we are the only species on Earth that can rebel against the tyranny of the selfish gene. Every other animal is controlled almost entirely by its genetic programming. A bee cannot choose to stop protecting the hive. A salmon cannot decide not to swim upstream. But humans can think about our genes, understand them, and consciously choose to act against them. We can choose not to have children. We can donate to strangers we will never meet. We can practice kindness toward people who share none of our genes. We can use contraception, adopt children, give blood, and build hospitals. None of these things help our genes survive, but we do them anyway, because we have the mental capacity to override our biological programming. Dawkins calls this the power of foresight. Because we can imagine the future, we can make choices that go beyond what our genes want. This is what makes human beings unique and, in Dawkins' view, genuinely special. The fourth key idea is the extended phenotype. A phenotype is the physical expression of a gene, things like eye color, height, or the shape of a bird's beak. But Dawkins argues that the influence of a gene does not stop at the boundary of the body. Genes can shape the world outside the body too. His most striking example is the beaver's dam. A beaver builds a dam because its genes program it to do so. The dam changes the environment, it creates a pond, floods a forest, and affects hundreds of other species. The dam is a physical structure in the world, but it was built by the beaver's genes. In a very real sense, the dam is an expression of those genes, just as much as the beaver's flat tail or sharp teeth. Dawkins also gives the example of the cuckoo. A cuckoo lays its egg in another bird's nest. When the cuckoo chick hatches, it pushes the other eggs out of the nest. Then it makes a very loud, very specific begging call. This call manipulates the host parent, a completely different species, into feeding the cuckoo chick as if it were its own baby. The cuckoo's genes are controlling the behavior of another animal's body. That is the extended phenotype in action. This idea expanded the whole concept of what a gene can do. Genes do not just build bodies. They build behaviors, relationships, and structures that reach far out into the world. Now let us talk about why Dawkins believed all of this so strongly. Dawkins was deeply influenced by the work of biologists William Hamilton and George Price, who had developed mathematical models showing how genes spread through populations. These models were elegant and powerful, but they were written in dense academic language that most people could not read. Dawkins believed these ideas were too important to stay hidden in academic journals. He felt that if ordinary people understood how evolution really worked, at the level of the gene, they would see the world completely differently. He was right. He also believed that understanding our genetic nature does not make life meaningless. Quite the opposite. When you understand that your genes are selfish, you realize that your kindness, your love, and your generosity are not just programmed responses. They are genuine choices that go beyond what biology requires of you. That makes them more meaningful, not less. So what can you actually take away from this book? Here are 3 practical steps you can apply starting today. First, look at your relationships with new eyes. When you feel a strong pull to help a family member, even at great personal cost, you are seeing kin selection in action. This does not make your love less real. But understanding the biological roots of family loyalty can help you make more conscious choices about when to give and when to protect your own well-being. Second, think about the memes you spread. Every time you share an idea, a story, or a belief with someone else, you are participating in cultural evolution. Ask yourself, is this idea true? Is it helpful? Is it spreading because it is good, or simply because it is good at spreading? Dawkins' concept of the meme is a powerful tool for thinking more carefully about what we choose to pass on to others. Third, remember that you are not just your genes. Dawkins' most important message is that humans have the unique ability to override their biological programming. You can choose generosity over selfishness, long-term thinking over short-term instinct, and compassion for strangers over loyalty only to kin. Every time you make one of these choices, you are doing something truly remarkable. You are using your mind to transcend the very forces that created you. The Selfish Gene is not a comfortable book. It challenges many of our most basic assumptions about love, sacrifice, and what it means to be human. But it is also a deeply hopeful book. It tells us that we are not prisoners of our DNA. We are the first creatures in the history of life on Earth who can look at our own programming, understand it, and choose to do better. That is a remarkable thing to be.